The first thing he said to me was, "She's even better behind the lens." I turned, and there he was. Polished. Confident. A little too tan for San Francisco in April. He held a glass of red wine like it was part of the performance. I didn't know his name yet, but I recognized the type. The kind who mistakes arrogance for charm. The kind my wife, apparently, liked to keep around. She? I asked, even though I knew. He smiled, like this was all a game. Your wife. The artist of the hour. Brilliant work in there. Bold. Intimate. He leaned in slightly. I should know. I've seen her work from all angles. I just stared at him. I didn't flinch. Didn't blink. She's all yours now, I said calmly. The words didn't come from a place of anger. More like resignation. Like closing the door to a house you already know is burning. His smirk wavered for a second, not because he felt guilt, but because he expected me to react. To punch him. To explode. I didn't. Then came her voice behind me. Who's all who's now? She stepped into the conversation like someone walking onto a stage they didn't realize had an audience. She wore her usual exhibition outfit, minimalist black dress, subtle gold necklace, perfectly tousled hair. The look that says serious artist, while still playing for Instagram. He turned to her with a smile. We were just talking about your work. She paused, eyes darting between us. Uh-huh. I stepped aside so they were facing each other. You two should talk, I said. Seems like you've got history. Her face went pale for a second, just one beat, before she pasted on a smile. Okay, what's going on? He looked amused. She looked cornered. I looked at the people around us, gallery patrons sipping wine, friends of friends hovering by the hors d'oeuvres, art students with notebooks pretending to be critics. All of them starting to notice. Enjoy the rest of your show, I told her, loud enough for others to hear. Then I turned and walked toward the main room, the buzz of conversation thinning as people realized something was unraveling. She didn't follow. Not yet. But the cracks had started. I didn't make it far down the sidewalk before I heard the clack of her heels behind me. Wait, can you stop for 1 second? She called, out of breath, as if chasing me was the exhausting part of this. I kept walking. Dylan, she snapped. Seriously. I turned then. Slowly. What do you want me to say? She caught up, arms crossed tight like armor. That guy? That was just drama. You know how people are at these things. That guy, I said calmly, talked about seeing you from all angles. I'm a photojournalist, Paige. I know what that means. Her face tightened. You don't get to act like the victim. You've been emotionally MIA for years. You live out of duffel bags. I've spent holidays alone while you were off photographing refugee camps and riots. I let that hang in the air. I've been working, I said, quieter now. You knew who I was before you married me. And you knew who I was, she shot back. I need connection. Not just postcards from war zones and surprise flights home once a month. I nodded. Right. So that's what this is? Connection? I tilted my head toward the gallery. How long's it been going on? She hesitated. It's complicated. Not really, I said. You used my professional card to book that dinner, Paige. I saw the charge. The same dinner where he toasted to your raw vulnerability, and the room clapped like you just painted the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. She winced. That was a business expense. It's a gallery. You know how these things work. No, I said, stepping back. I know how you work. People were starting to look now. A few attendees had followed us outside, lingering like moths to a street lamp. Her eyes flicked nervously toward the door, calculating. You're making a scene, she hissed. Me. I said. I didn't bring him. I didn't turn my marriage into a networking opportunity. She exhaled sharply. You're being cruel. No, I said, voice steady. I'm being honest. For once. Then I turned to the man standing in the gallery doorway, same smug face, now looking a little unsure. You can have her, I said loud enough for everyone to hear. She's not my problem anymore. Paige froze. Her jaw worked like she wanted to say something, defend, deflect, deny, but nothing came out. So I walked away. And this time, she didn't follow. Gabe's loft had always been a landing pad for me. Exposed brick, industrial lighting, the smell of old film chemicals that somehow never left his rugs. He was out of town on assignment in Oaxaca, but he left the key for me under the rusted smile, "You're on camera" sign like always. I dropped my gear by the couch and sat down hard. The kind of exhaustion that wasn't about the body. I didn't even take off my boots. It wasn't even midnight yet when my laptop pinged. The email subject line was just one word. Thought you should know. No name. Just a burner Gmail account. And a zip file. I stared at it. There's a kind of dread that hits like static electricity, fast, sharp, invisible. My hand hovered over the trackpad. Then I clicked. Inside, folders. Dated. Titled by location. Studio_NOV_19. Palm Springs_weekend. Basement_cam_2. I clicked one. The first video was grainy. Security footage from my own studio. There she was, Paige, pressed against the wall, tangled up with someone I didn't recognize. Laughing. Shirt half off. I slammed the spacebar. Closed it. My stomach flipped. I opened the next folder. Screenshots. Messages. Different men. Airdropped images of her lying in bed with timestamps matching nights she'd told me she was editing late or visiting her sister in Berkeley. Then came the spreadsheet. A fucking spreadsheet. Men/city/timeline. Column A. Names. Some I knew. My editor, Julian. A former mentor from my first newspaper job. Column B. Locations. Column C. Notes. One line read. Julian, Costa Rica assignment. Used Dylan's miles. I laughed. Or maybe choked. I couldn't tell the difference. And then there was a final folder. R_phone_backups. Inside, photos. Messages. A second phone number I didn't recognize, but clearly hers. The texts were explicit, yes, but worse than that, they were intimate. Real affection. She joked with this guy, made plans, sent selfies she never sent me. She told him things. Things she never told me. I sat there in Gabe's kitchen, my hands shaking as I scrolled. It felt like watching my marriage die in slow motion. I didn't even hear the door open. Gabe's building manager, Rosa, popped in to check on something. I must have looked wrecked, because she froze in the doorway. You okay? She asked softly. I shook my head. Want me to call anyone? Already called, I muttered. Just didn't know it yet. After she left, I copied everything to a secure drive. Labeled it plainly, Page_evidence. I stared at the file for a long time. This wasn't just infidelity. It was deliberate. A network. I'd been used. Financially, emotionally, even professionally. I texted Gabe. Me. Got your key. Staying a while. Shit hit the fan. He replied 2 minutes later. Gabe, you want me to come back early? Me. No. Just needed somewhere real for a minute. Thanks, man. And then I sat there, in someone else's silence, feeling like my life had collapsed in 3 clicks. Lucia Rains didn't say much when I laid out the evidence. Just raised an eyebrow, clicked a few times on her keyboard, and said, "We're going scorched earth," then. Her office was sharp, clean, like her mind. Mid-40s, no nonsense, and the kind of person who probably made ex-husbands cry during depositions. I'd photographed her once years ago during a corruption case downtown. Never thought I'd end up on the other side of her desk. She opened the folder marked Page_evidence and spent a solid 20 minutes going through it, no interruptions. Occasionally muttered things like, Jesus, and you've got half the city in here. When she finally spoke, she tapped her pen twice against the desk. Adultery alone isn't always a slam dunk in California, but reputational damage, financial fraud, and identity misuse? She smiled, tight and professional. She's going to regret thinking you'd roll over. I nodded, arms crossed. She used my work accounts, my miles, even some NGO donor perks. Lucia flipped to another screen and started typing. We'll hit her with asset reallocation, breach of fiduciary responsibility, and if she contests, we subpoena the studio footage. In the spreadsheet, I added, with my editor's name. That too, she said, without missing a beat. 2 days later, I got her voicemail. Paige. Her voice was clipped but fake calm, like she'd rehearsed it 20 times. Hey, I saw the lawyer's letter. This is ridiculous, Dylan. We're adults. There's no need to blow things up just because you're hurt. You've always been distant, cold. You bury yourself in cameras and call it meaning. I needed more. Don't overreact. Call me, okay. I didn't call. Instead, I sent the voicemail to Lucia. She replied with a thumbs up emoji and a message. Keep everything. We build from here. Later that night, another email popped into my inbox. A podcast sponsorship cancellation. Not mine, hers. The cracks were spreading. Quietly. Invisibly. And I wasn't going to stop them. She thought this was about heartbreak. It wasn't. It was about truth. She walked into the courtroom like it was a runway. Black heels, cream blazer, oversized sunglasses she didn't take off until the bailiff told her to. Her attorney trailed behind her, a wiry guy in a blue suit who looked like he got his law degree off a podcast. She smiled at people as she passed, like we were at a gallery showing instead of a preliminary hearing. I didn't smile back. Lucia sat beside me, calm as a glacier. She slid the USB across the table without a word. When the judge called us up, Paige stood tall, confident. Her lawyer opened with the usual performance: marital breakdown, abandonment, workaholic husband, emotional neglect. He was never home, he said, glancing back at me with a faint smirk. My client made every effort to preserve the marriage. Lucia didn't even blink. Your Honor, we have digital evidence of multiple extramarital relationships, some of which directly violated joint financial agreements. The judge looked up from his notes. You have evidence? Lucia nodded. Yes, Your Honor. This USB contains time-stamped images, messages, transaction records, and surveillance footage. All verified. The smirk vanished from the other lawyer's face. Paige's eyes darted to me for the first time. I met them, steady and silent. The judge plugged in the USB. The screen behind him flickered to life. First came the spreadsheet, then the videos. It took less than 2 minutes before Paige's lawyer leaned over and whispered something. Probably. You didn't tell me this was real. Paige stayed quiet, arms crossed, jaw tight. This is an attempt to assassinate my character, she finally said, her voice cold. None of this proves emotional abandonment wasn't the cause. Lucia raised an eyebrow. It proves intentional fraud. It proves infidelity with professional consequences. And it proves that while my client was overseas documenting human rights abuses, your client was using his credentials to fly to Palm Springs for sex weekends. The judge held up a hand. We'll review full discovery at the next session. But I advise the respondent to take these allegations seriously. Outside the courtroom, she caught up with me at the elevators. You think this makes you a hero? She hissed, dragging me through court like I'm some criminal. I looked at her for a long second, then said, no. Paused. But watching you lose? That might. The elevator dinged. I stepped in. The doors closed between us like a quiet little curtain call. I found the burner phone by accident. It was stuffed inside an old leather camera case she used to borrow when she wanted to play with vintage vibes for her Instagram reels. I only opened it because I thought one of my old memory cards might still be inside. Instead, I found a second phone. Dead, cracked at the edge, cheap, burner style. I charged it. Just out of curiosity, I told myself. But I already knew better. There were only a few apps. No social media. No backup cloud. Just a messaging app and photos. The first message I opened was from a contact saved as R. R, missed you today. You looked beautiful last night. R, I can still smell you. And then Paige, replying. Paige, you always say the right things. Better than my husband ever did. There were hundreds of messages. Some old, some recent. Enough to show this wasn't a fling, it was a second relationship. He called her baby. She sent him edited previews of her gallery work. They joked about me, quiet jabs, like I was a background character in their little romance. But the kicker was a photo she sent him. It was from the gallery opening. Same night. Same dress. She had taken a selfie in the green room mirror, puckered lips, fingers on the fabric of her neckline. And underneath, she'd captioned it. For you. Only you. I knew then. R was the smug bastard from the opening. The man who said she was better behind the lens. That night, I tracked down the number through an old contact at the city paper. A couple pings later, I had a name. Reed Bannon. City councilman. Married. 2 kids. He'd voted down a bill on city arts grants last year, probably while texting my wife. I found his office, found his car, found his favorite lunch spot. But I didn't go there. I waited. Then I sent him a message from a clean burner of my own. Me, we should talk. Alone. R, who is this? Me, she's all yours now. He showed up at the empty parking garage 2 hours later, headlights sweeping through the damp concrete like a spotlight in a bad movie. He stepped out of a black Lexus, collar up, scanning nervously. When he saw me, he stiffened. You're him, he said. The husband. I nodded. And you're Reed. The public servant who likes married photographers. He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. She kept the phone. I said, you were supposed to be the secret. You weren't. His face twitched. Look, man. No, I said. Don't give me the speech. He held his hands up, like this was a negotiation. She told me you two were basically done, he said. Said you were a ghost. Gone all the time. No spark. I didn't know it was this serious. She said the same to me. I replied, about you. He blinked. What? I nodded at the car. Your wife still believe you're at community board meetings every Thursday? He went pale. You and I have more in common than you think, I added. Same lies. Same woman. We stood there in the silence of that garage. Two men, equally used, equally fooled. Finally, he spoke. So what now? I stepped closer. Now? We ruin her script. We didn't meet at a cafe or some corner office downtown. We met her in the only place that felt honest now. A parking lot behind her studio. Neutral ground. Gray concrete. Peeling paint on the loading dock. The kind of place where secrets feel louder. Reed and I didn't speak much on the drive there. He was gripping the steering wheel like it held the last of his career. I sat in the passenger seat, watching the city slide by like it was no longer mine. Paige arrived late, of course. Always did. She stepped out of her car like she was stepping into character. Tight jeans, turtleneck, messy bun that probably took an hour. She saw Reed first and smiled like it was a joke. Oh wow, she said. This feels very dramatic. Then she saw me. The smile twitched. You brought him? She asked Reed, voice sharp now. No, I said, stepping forward. He brought me. She blinked. What is this? We know everything, Reed said flatly. The phone, the photos, the texts. Her face barely moved. You two plotting a podcast or something? I pulled the phone from my pocket. Her burner. I tossed it to the pavement at her feet. She didn't flinch. You played us both, Reed said. Told me you were done with him. Told him you barely knew me. She folded her arms. And you believed me? That's on you. You lied, I said. To everyone. For what? To feel important. She scoffed. Please. You act like I'm some villain in your sad little movie. You think I owed either of you loyalty when I was being ignored, used, boxed in? Reed shook his head. You used my name on your nonprofit grant proposals. Told people we were collaborating. She shrugged. And your career got a nice bump in the arts community, didn't it? Then came the click of heels behind us. We all turned. A woman walked up slowly from the alley, calm and deliberate. Mid-40s. Expensive coat. Smartphone in hand. Hello, Paige, she said. Paige went pale. Molly Bannon. Reed's wife. Surprised? She asked, lifting her phone, still recording. Funny thing about burner phones. You forget what cloud backups are linked to. Molly, this isn't. Shut up, Molly snapped. Both of you. Reed froze. Paige stepped back. You want to lie to your husband, your lover, your grant sponsors, and me? Molly said, voice ice cold. That's fine. But when you lied to my face about mentoring our daughter and then slept with my husband, that's war. She stepped forward, raising the phone. Say hi to the internet. Paige lunged, but I blocked her. Don't bother, I said. It's already uploading. You can't do this, she hissed. Molly laughed. I can. And I will. This isn't revenge. It's exposure. Then whack. A slap. Loud and perfect. Paige's head whipped sideways. She stumbled, one hand to her cheek, mouth open in shock. You just ruined everything, she whispered. No, I said. You did that on your own. She spun toward me. You think this makes you better than me? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I just turned, walked to the curb, and didn't look back. Paige stood there in the middle of the lot, stunned, mascara already smudging. Reed stayed frozen, and Molly? She kept recording, quiet and satisfied. Somewhere in the distance, I heard sirens. It wasn't justice. Not yet. But it was coming. I didn't go to the press. Not directly. I went to Margot. She was an old colleague from my early journalism days in Sacramento. We used to cover city council hearings together, back when deadlines were tight and paychecks tighter. Now she ran a podcast called The Third Rail, a gritty, no-fluff show that specialized in ethical disasters, political takedowns, and viral human stories that punched you in the throat. I sent her a message. Me. You still take anonymous submissions? Margot, depends. What kind of fire are we lighting? I sent her a single file. No explanation. Just the folder, page_avalanche.zip. She called me 30 minutes later. Jesus Christ, she whispered. This is a season, not a story. I don't want my name in it, I said. No hints. No bylines. Done, she replied without hesitation. But this is going to blow up. 3 weeks later, it did. She split the release into a 3-part series. Part 1, The Gallery Wife. Part 2, The Grant Games. Part 3, Behind the Lens, Beneath the Lies. She blurred faces. censored certain names, but not all of them. The texts were read aloud by voice actors. The spreadsheet was posted on her site with key names redacted, but not Reed's. The video of the parking lot confrontation, with Molly's permission, was included in episode 3. It hit like a thunderclap. Within hours, Paige's name was trending on X. By day 2, her website was down for maintenance. By day 4, her largest gallery sponsor released a statement about reviewing their artist vetting process. Her comment sections were locked. Her Instagram wiped. A petition started circulating online to have her removed from a major upcoming arts festival in Seattle. Within a week, they pulled her name from the lineup. Her sponsors dropped her. Her podcast gigs dried up. Even her arts residency board, the one she bragged about, constantly issued a vague but telling press release about ethical concerns. Margot kept my name out of it. Not a trace. She honored her word. But even in anonymity, I felt the shift. Strangers posted comments like, "Whoever that guy was, whoever collected all this and dropped the match, you're a goddamn legend." And another, "This is what real exposure looks like. Calm, precise, devastating." I didn't smile. Not really. But I exhaled for the first time in months. I walked through the city the next morning like the buildings weighed less. Nobody knew it was me. And that was perfect. Because it wasn't about being seen. It was about her finally being seen for who she really was. It started with a letter. Not an email. Not a text. An actual handwritten letter, delivered to my building's front desk with no return address, sealed in a cream envelope with my name printed in her signature cursive. Inside was one page. Lined. No apology. No regret. Just a threat. "You think you're untouchable. But I have everything. Your contracts, your photos, even your old notebooks from Haiti. You remember what you documented there? What you promised to never release. Let's see how your NGOs feel about your moral compass when I go public." She signed it with just an initial. P. I sat there at the kitchen counter, reading it 3 times. My jaw didn't clench. My heart didn't pound. I just felt tired. Then my phone buzzed. My mother. Voicemail. I played it on speaker. "Hi, sweetie. Paige stopped by the house today crying." I didn't want to call, but she was saying some really disturbing things. About you. About control. About manipulation. "I think we should talk." There it was. The last card. Play the victim. Rewrite the narrative. Smear me through emotion and implication. I forwarded the voicemail and the letter to Lucia. She responded within minutes. "Lucia, bring the original. We're filing an injunction tomorrow." We did. At the final hearing, the courtroom felt smaller. Colder. No more dramatic outfits on her end. She wore flats, no makeup, a cardigan 2 sizes too big. Her attorney had changed, too. Some budget guy with a beat-up briefcase who looked annoyed to be there. Lucia handed the judge the letter. Then pressed play on the voicemail. No theatrics. Just evidence. The judge read the letter aloud, line by line. When he finished, he set it down, adjusted his glasses, and spoke with the kind of deliberate calm that signals a reckoning. "In light of this material and previous submissions, I am finalizing the divorce. Alimony is denied. The restraining order is granted for a period of 3 years." Paige didn't say a word. Not then. Not as the gavel dropped. Not as her lawyer slowly packed his files, expression unreadable. She just sat there. Shoulders slumped. Eyes glazed. Like it had all finally hit her, but too late to matter. Outside, Lucia clapped me on the back. "It's over." "No," I said. "It's finished." "That's different." That night, I walked home through fog and silence. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clear. She'd made her last move. And I'd returned it without rage, without shouting, just the truth, read aloud in a courtroom, where lies die under oath. 3 weeks later, I stood barefoot on the hardwood floor of my apartment, coffee in hand, watching the light stretch through the window like it had finally remembered I existed. No more calls. No more letters. No more fires to put out. Just silence. But this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt sacred. I'd moved most of my life into a simple 1-bedroom in the outer Sunset, near the ocean. Minimalist, not by trend, but by need. No art on the walls yet. Just books. My cameras. And a steel gray couch that didn't care if I fell asleep on it fully clothed. I spent my mornings walking the sand with my shoes slung over my shoulder, letting the cold Pacific wrap around my ankles like a reset button. Some days I took photos. Some days I didn't. But I always looked. And for the first time in a long time, I saw clearly. I'd spent years trying to rescue a marriage I hadn't realized was already gone. I ignored the signs deliberately, repackaged them as artistic temperament, distance, growing pains. I gave her the benefit of the doubt long after she stopped deserving it, because I thought if I stayed patient, stayed solid, she'd come back. She didn't, but I did. The podcast was still making rounds. Margot had added a bonus episode last week, breaking down the ethics of deception in creative partnerships. My inbox had quietly filled with thank yous from strangers, fellow photographers, survivors of messy divorces, people who saw themselves in a story that, technically, wasn't even about me. I read them all. Didn't respond. Didn't need to. I wasn't chasing closure anymore. I was living it. That morning, I uploaded one final photo to my private portfolio. No hashtags. No announcement. Just one image. A sunrise over Ocean Beach. Pale gold bleeding into mist. The shoreline cracked with footprints that led nowhere. I titled it, Unseen. No caption. Because sometimes, peace isn't something you explain. It's something you keep.